All right, so we're going to go ahead and start by drawing this. We're going to go ahead and draw this out. And -3, -2 is down here. So I have this one point, -3, 2. Now I'm going to go through and draw my ray through that. So I am looking for all the trig functions that will match this. Now I really need to go through and draw my triangle inside here. So I'm going to go through and make my triangle. So remember, this is always my x value and my y value. To label the x and the y in this triangle, remember x is here, the distance, and y is always going to be the height. We need to find the hypotenuse down here. So in order to do that, we need to use the Pythagorean Theorem. Make sure you include the signs when you do this. So that's -3 squared plus -2 squared is equal to the hypotenuse squared. 9 plus 4 is equal to h squared, or h is equal to the square root of 13. So h becomes the square root of 13. Now, a word about reference angles. Talked about them before. Well, this is the angle theta that we're actually talking about. That value of theta matches this value of theta, just with possibly different signs for the 6 trig functions. Now, a word about signs. Remember, all students take cash. So what that means is that we're filling out these trig functions, that because this is in the 3rd quadrant, we know that the tangent of whatever the angle is and the cotangent of that angle will both be positive. Everything else will be negative. Now, let's go ahead and put all of the values in. So if I have the sine of theta, that is y over the hypotenuse. So that is just -2 over the square root of 13. I do have to rationalize that. So we're going to multiply that top and bottom by the square root of 13 over the square root of 13. And that gives me -2 square root of 13 all over 13. All right, the next one we'll go ahead and do, just because it's the reciprocal function, will be the cosecant of theta. Now, when we do this reciprocal function, I'm going to take the reciprocal before I rationalized it. So that will just give me a value of square root of 13 over 2. And I'm just going to put that negative out front. The negative, whether it's with a 2 or out front, mean the same thing. All right, the next piece I'm going to do is the cosine of theta. The cosine of theta is x over the hypotenuse, which is -3 over the square root of 13. Again, we rationalize. And we get -3 square root of 13 over 13. I'm going to take the reciprocal function, and I'm going to do that of the value before I rationalized, so that I get the secant of theta is equal to the square root of 13 all over -3. And again, if you don't, you can put the negative out front instead. The last two we have to do are the tangent function. So the tangent of theta is y over x, or -2 over -3, which is positive 2/3. And then the cotangent is the reciprocal function, or 3 over 2. All right, so the information that we're given here is that we want to find all of the trig values associated with the angle theta, knowing that the angle goes through the point 3, -4. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to give myself some little bit more room here. I'm going to go ahead and draw this angle out. So this is my coordinate plane. It goes through the point 3, -3, and then up here at a positive 3 square root of 2. So it's some point up here in this range. So this is my ray that goes through the point. Now, in order to be able to do this, we have to label both my x value and my y value. Remember that this is my x and this is my y. So as I'm going through and drawing this triangle in, the screen that hangs down from the ray, that is my y value, or that is 3 square root of 2. My x value is the distance over, which is -3. Now I need to find the hypotenuse of that. So -3 squared plus 3 square root of 2 squared is equal to that value for my hypotenuse. -3 squared is 9. Now, when I am squaring something that has both a number and a radical, first you square the 3. 3 squared is 9. And then I go ahead and the square root of 2 squared is just 2. So that becomes 9 times 2. Order of operations is important here. Make sure you multiply. So that gives me 9 plus 18 is equal to that hypotenuse squared. 9 plus 18 is 27 is equal to hypotenuse squared. So therefore, I then take the square root of both of those sides. You do have to reduce that. So 27 is 9 times 3. The square root of 9 is 3. So that gives us 3 square root of 3 as a hypotenuse. Now, once I have that, I can go through and fill out all of my other pieces. Now, the sine of any angle is just the opposite, or the y over the hypotenuse. Cosine is x over the hypotenuse. Tangent is y over x. And the cosecant, secant, and cotangent are just the reciprocals of those. Now, really important with this is make sure you follow those signs. That 3 is negative. Now, the other way you could go through and make sure to do this, a lot of students find it beneficial just to put the values, whether it's positive or negative, first to make sure they don't make any mistakes. All values are positive in the first quadrant. Students, the sign is positive in the second quadrant. Take cash. So I know right away that the sine is positive, the cosecant is also positive, and every other value for the trig functions will be negative. So let's go through and find those. So this just becomes 3 square root of 2 all over 3 square root of 3. The 3's cancel and equal 1. Now I have to rationalize. I rationalize by taking the square root of 3 over the square root of 3 for both. And then I get the square root of 6 all over 3. Now I'm going to take the reciprocal, and I'm going to start with this one. I'm going to always try to use the value before you rationalize it. So I'm going to take the reciprocal of 2 over 3, and that just becomes the square root of 3 over the square root of 2. Rationalize that. I'm going to want to multiply the top and the bottom by the square root of 2, and I am left with the square root of 6 over 2. All right, so the next one is the cosine. Cosine is the x value. And remember, we're just looking at the x value here, the y value here, and the hypotenuse. So the cosine just becomes negative 3 over 3 square root of 3. I can simplify that a little bit because that becomes 1. I now rationalize by taking the square root of 3 over the square root of 3. And then my final answer here will be negative square root of 3 all over 3. Now I take the reciprocal, and again I'm going to start with 3 square root of 3 over negative 3. So that just equals negative square root of 3. So this one's nice. We didn't have to rationalize this one. The last one that we have is the tangent, which is y over x. So that is just going to be 3 square root of 2 over negative 3. And the reciprocal of that is the cotangent. Let's go ahead and simplify that. So that's just going to end up being negative square root of 2. The reciprocal will be 1 over negative square root of 2, which is just equal to the square root of 2 negative all over 2. I know there's a lot of rationalizing in this one, but it is definitely a skill that you will need to be proficient at.